Hi, everybody. I'm Janet Tishan Mullins, and I'm a food and nutrition specialist with the University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension Service. With me today is Chef Ouita Michel, and we're going to be discussing her new book, Just a Few Miles South, that we're going to go over and really dig into for our July Big Blue Book Club. So we thought we'd start by just telling you a little bit about how Ouita and I met. Of course, it was over food. Ouita and I both go to Midway Christian Church, and that is a very food-oriented place. They serve community dinners, and so Ouita and I really met over a love of cooking. And some of you all may know that both of my sets of grandparents owned restaurants. And so I come from a long line of cooking, and we really value cooking. So Ouita, what can you tell me about how you learned to cook?
Well, I learned to cook from my mom. And I remember being about 7 years old enough that I wasn't tiny, but had to stand on a stool. And I had a little knife, my own little paring knife. And my mom made salad every single night, so it was my job to start cutting up the vegetables and learning how to cut up carrots and celery. And she had to take a job outside the home when I was 15. And I started being more and more interested. I don't think I was responsible for all the cooking by any means, but there were certain nights where I would get the meal ready. And we always had a garden. My grandmother was a wonderful cook. But in college, I began to be very interested in restaurant culture and cooking professionally. In those days, there was no Food Network or even cable television, really. So I had a subscription to Gourmet Magazine that I was given when I was 16. And I loved the column. They had one column about all the restaurants in New York City, and maybe one from LA or different cities, maybe Paris, and I would read that cover to cover. And yeah, that's a little bit how I got into it.
Interesting. I can remember being 16, and my mom always worked outside the home, and it was my responsibility to go grocery shopping, which I loved, and then to cook dinner. So it's a great way to learn.
Yeah, it is. Willa loves to go grocery shopping by herself. My daughter, she's going to be 17 this next month. And when she finished her road test, and the first thing she wanted to do was go to the grocery store by herself.
I love it.
It's wonderful, yes.
And it is. It's a nice help for the household.
It's a nice help, and yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's part of becoming self-sustainable as an adult.
Yeah. Okay, so when you think about what makes a recipe timeless, you say these are timeless recipes. One of the things for me that I value the most are handwritten recipes.
Yeah.
I have a handwritten recipe from each of my grandmothers. And so tell us about what makes a recipe timeless for you.
Well, handwritten recipes are treasures, and I have a box of them from my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and my mother. Even my great-grandfather used one of those old typewriters. But in the case of this book, these recipes took years. They've been made for years. So Wallace Station is 16 years old, I believe, this year. Holly Hill Inn is 20. And we started developing these recipes that are in this book, in Holly Hill first, then passing them on to the subsequent restaurants as they opened. And so things like pimento cheese, I mean, how long have we been making pimento cheese in Kentucky? Many, many years. Benedictine would date back to the 30s probably. So there are a lot of recipes that date way back in Kentucky's culinary or food culture, but we're soup, beans, and cornbread, for example. But we're just codifying those recipes and giving them out in a book form so that people see how we do them this time in this place. Yeah. So I guess that's what makes timeless.
It does, I think. A lot of people today are really interested in food systems and contributing to their community by buying local foods. Maybe a lot of people now know what a community-supported agriculture share is.
Right.
So what advice would you have to people who are interested in being more of a support and strengthening their local food systems?
Well, I have said this before, if you don't want to support factory prepared foods in your community, you need to look for, and you enjoy eating in restaurants, you should eat in restaurants that prepare the food from scratch and who buy Kentucky produced ingredients. So we're part of the Buy Local program with the Kentucky Proud Kentucky Department of Agriculture, and we're lifetime members at every restaurant. Zim's is slated this year sometime. They'll get to their lifetime. But I think I would simply ask people, I don't want this to be a marketing program for me, but there are all kinds of restaurants in our community who serve hamburgers made with Kentucky Proud or Kentucky raised beef. And that's a great place to start. If you're going to have a hamburger, why not pick that particular kind of hamburger? At Kroger now, you can get the Kentucky Cattleman's ground beef. You can shop at the farmer's market. But you can make small decisions. You can grow your own garden. If you don't have time to garden, of course, a CSA share is an excellent way to get started, using that local produce in your diet. But I know we have community-supported agriculture, and I like to say we also have community-supported restaurants, because our community came out in 2020 and supported our restaurants like never before, and have sustained us through this past year, and is why we're sitting here today.
Yes, 2020 was quite a year.
Yes, it was.
And I think a lot of people really kind of reclaimed their kitchens, and they started cooking again. And so I think that's one reason why we have several hundred Kentuckians now registered for our Big Blue Book Club. And they're going to hear about Just a Few Miles South. And so what would you say to them, that group of hundreds of Kentuckians who are getting ready to dive in to this cookbook?
Well, these are recipes that you can make every day, and I want to encourage you to share this book with your children, because we both started cooking at a very young age, and a lot of these recipes like chicken salad, tuna salad, pimento cheese, bourbon white cheddar, maybe not the bourbon white cheddar spread, we don't want the young ones involved in that yet, but chocolate chip cookies, biscuits, those kinds of things it's appropriate for them to start making those now while they're in elementary school, while they're in middle school. And I think also these recipes really, they've been tested and tested and tested to make sure that they work for the home cook. So it's my hope that people really enjoy them. This is a book built for the home cook. It's not a chef's book where you go through and look at all the pictures and there's 27 ingredients and you need a sous vide machine. This is chili and meatloaf and fried chicken, and these are the staples of so many of our restaurants.
Boy, I'm hungry, you all. How about if we dig right in? So welcome to the Big Blue Book Club, and we're going to be talking about Ouita Michel's cookbook, Just a Few Miles South.